I grew up in Plainfield, which was 26 miles outside of Manhattan. So we would very regularly drive into Manhattan. We would see Broadway shows. We would go to the museums. It was very much a part of our lives. And I'm making the assumption that everybody else in the world is the same way, that for fun they go to museums, you know, and for fun they discuss books, you know. So, you know, later I grew up and I found that that's not true either, but you know, that's the kind of family I came from. I was fortunate to have the kind of family that encouraged me to follow my dreams. My father was an amateur thespian, and all of their friends were very creative. So it really wasn't a big leap for me to be the talented kid in grade school and then grow up to be the one who went to college, studied art, you know, went on for a master's degree. It was kind of a given in my family that that's what I would do. The question never came up, you know, how are you going to feed yourself? And unfortunately as well, when I went to college, I graduated with an undergraduate degree in 1974 and a master's in 1980. And I have to tell you that all throughout that time, I was 30 by the time I got my master's degree, I completed it. None of my professors said a word about how you're going to make a living. The real world started right after I graduated California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland, and the first job that I got was reading telephone numbers from midnight to 8 a.m. And you had to find a certain sequence, and when you did, you pushed a button. You know, I felt like a rat. I did every kind of ridiculous job you could ever imagine. For example, when I was in Manhattan, I started to work for this company that manufactured clothing, and they were called Good Times. And that was because they were snorting cocaine in the back. But I didn't know that. I mean, that's how naive I was. For a period of time, I ran away from Manhattan, and I actually lived in St. Augustine, and I was pumping gas. I guess the most discouraging thing about the whole process was not the jobs, not the having to make a living doing something odd, because, you know, those things are always interesting. But it was, you would do work and you would think, wow, this is nice stuff. And then you'd have a whole body of it, and you would photograph it, and you'd send it out, and you'd think, this is going to do it. This bodywork's going to do it. And it wouldn't do it. Prior to living here in Aripeka, little fishing village of 500 people, is a huge contrast from where I used to live, which was Manhattan, which was 8 million people or more. And there are more commercial galleries in Manhattan, New York City, than there are anywhere else in the world. And yet, when I was a practicing artist in Manhattan, I couldn't get my foot in the door. Nobody wanted anything to do with me. And I came to Florida, and I changed completely. In Manhattan, I painted people. Down here, I paint what goes as landscapes. There's really no other way to describe it. And when I came down here, I did the same thing that I did in Manhattan, which was that I decided I would go the route of commercial galleries. The very first place I ever approached was a gallery in Tampa. And the next day, I had a phone call from her, and she said, "Oh my God, I got your slides. I really love your work. Can you bring something down so I can see it in person?" As she's hanging the show, we sold my first piece. And that's the way Florida has been for me ever since then. So it took me many, many years to figure it out. Many years to figure it out. And I'm delighted to say that I am living the life that most artists would kill for. You know, I live in a beautiful place. I have a magnificent studio. I wake up in the morning and I own that day. I do whatever it is that I want to do. I make art, I exhibit it, people buy it. I haven't had a day job for probably 18 years. And as to my work not being all that accessible, it's much more abstract, my theory is that I have hit a chord with my work. And I think it has something to do with, there's many times in our lives during the course of a year or a month when you say, wow, that was magical. And it's very often related to nature. And all human beings, I think, treasure that feeling of, wow, that was magical. Their identification with what I'm doing is strong enough that they say, I don't exactly get this, but I like it.